In this video, I'm going to only do just a half body muslin mock-up so I can test the fit of my contour waistband as well as the side seams, the full hip, and the back darts. Doing the half body muslin mock-up works great with your dress form, but it's not something that you could wear yourself or with a client. If you're working with a client and you don't have a dress form, then go ahead and move on to the next video where we cut and sew this as a full body muslin mock-up. At this stage now, we're ready to sew on the contour waistband. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you two different variations. One variation is doing just a half body and also having 1 inch extra seam allowance along the top and doing a fitting. And the second variation is going to be doing a complete body with a finished waistband all along the top edge. Okay, so following along with doing just a half body mock-up, let's take out your front and back. This is going to basically be her right leg. What we want to do is we want to sew the side seams of the waistband together, and then we're going to sew the waistband all the way from center front to center back. So take out your back and unfold it. Now the side seams of your front waistband are going to sew right sides together. Once you have them pinned, let's take this over to the sewing machine and we'll sew these at 1/2 inch. On the sewing machine, make sure you do a back tack at the beginning and at the end of your stitch so this doesn't fall apart when we do our fitting. To reduce some of the bulk, what we're going to do is we're going to butterfly press these open. So now you can see we have our full waistband, which is going to go from center back all the way here to center front. Since we're only doing a half body mock-up at this moment, what we're going to do is we're going to fold this in half, and I also want to put a stay stitch all along the top edge for what I think is the top that I want. So in this instance, we gave it 1 inch seam allowance. I'm going to come down and stay stitch 1 inch in. This will also hold the layers together. So I've pinned this in place so nothing's going to move, and I've just put a few 1 inch marks on here just to remind myself to follow this curve really accurately on the sewing machine. So now I have my stay stitch in place. You can see here's our center back going all the way to center front. What we're going to do is we're going to sew this to our front and back main body going all the way across. We want to start here at center back. One thing you need to remember is the center back fold of the waistband is going to match up with your stay stitch, which is exactly along that 1/2 inch mark. Because if you remember, when you sew a full body, this is actually going to be sewn to the other side, and that's going to be center back right there, so the center back would line up perfect with this. So let's go ahead and put these together, right sides together, matching up the raw edges and starting here at center back. So you can see here I've pinned the fold of the back contour waistband right at that 1/2 inch mark at my stay stitch at center back. Now for the rest of my contour waistband, I do not want to pin it into place. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start sewing and pivoting into place along the sewing machine and making sure to line up the side seams, my notch here at the grain line, my notch here at center front, and of course my 2 notches back here. Do a back tack at the beginning. Sew along the waistline at 1/2 inch, making sure to match all of your notches and side seams. And then do a back tack here at the end at center front. Now for those of you who are doing just the half body with the waistband, what you would do is you would come in and clip triangles on the waistband curve, but leave the seam allowance of the pants alone. Don't clip the pants seam allowance. So go ahead and do your triangles now. Now once you've clipped the seam allowances of just the waistband, what we're going to do is we're pressing all of the seam allowances upwards towards the waistband. So now we can press it, steam it, let it cool off. And then the last thing we need to do is sew the inseams together, right sides together. So now we can sew the inseams together. Make sure you back tack at the top and the bottom, because this is the last stitch that's going to hold this in place. Now let's come in here and we're going to butterfly press the inseam open. Once you've butterflied this open, let's go ahead and throw our stay stitch all the way around. So this is for me at the knee. For some of you, this will be all the way back down at the ankle. When you're stitching, make sure to start just before the inseam and go all the way around and end just after it, so you have a little bit of overlap here at the inseam. Let's go ahead and turn these to the correct side out, and we'll get our final press the same as you would do for a traditional work pant. So it's going to have the little bit of a crease in the front and in the back. What I'm going to do here is I'm stacking my side seam as well as my inseams right on top of each other. Now for pressing the front pleat, I'm making sure that my inseam and side seam are stacked on top of each other. And then I can come out here and I can see my grain line that I drew in pencil. And that's exactly where that pleat would go, all the way from the waistband all the way down to her ankles. And of course, this is after you have moved the pocket out of your way. So I'm just steaming it, letting it cool off. Now let's do the same thing here for the back. So I'm getting the pocket bag to go towards the front. You can fold it in half gently so it's out of your way. Along the back, again, we have the grain line for the back of the pants. That's where the pleat should be. So I'm going to just gently finger press it and make sure I'm getting the fold right on the grain line. Now for the first part of the pleat, you can only come up to the high hip area because the pants here is starting to curve into space. And then you can hold the pants up to get this last little bit. Now I just pressed it perfect right on the grain line with the pleat going all the way to the waistband. Realistically though, you don't want the pleat to be super aggressive up here in the full hip area. So now what I'll do is I'll take my ham, place it under here, and I'll just come back and I'll flatten that pleat out a little bit. So it's still half there, half gone. So going from below the full hip level, going down, I'm leaving it nice and crisp. We'll do the same thing here with the back. So you can see it's a sharp, crisp pleat here going above the full hip. And I'm going to just knock that down so it's not so aggressive. And I'm going to go ahead and just get my side pocket one more time. And I think I'm ready to go do a fitting now. Okay, so now we're ready to come in here and do a fitting with the half body mock-up. Just to review, so we were starting from the top of the back of her favorite underwear, also the location here at the side seam, and then squaring that back up with center front. When you come in here to put the half body pant back on, just make sure that the pocket bag is facing here towards the front, and you have to hold it while you slip this up over the leg. So I pinned it temporarily here at the front, so now I can come here and start at the back. We want to make sure that the center back fold of the contour waistband is at center back, and then the stay stitching on your pant leg here is also right at center back. And I'm pinning that direction because over here I'm going to start pulling the fabric and I want that pin to hold it. Same thing here at the top. Now when we come over to the side seams and center front, I'm also looking down here at the knee level, trying to make sure that it's staying parallel with the ground. And I could put a pin here at the side seam and work my way over towards center front. Now since we're doing a half body mock-up, right here at the horizontal bounce line for the full hip at center front, we need to pin this right to the dress form and making sure that that is on center front. I'm also pinning it pointing this way so I can't pull and move the fabric towards me. So it should take you a few rounds of moving back and forth from center front to center back and adjusting this to get to fit. It's a little more difficult to just do a half body on pants, but since we're working on a dress form, we can pin this right to the dress form. If you're doing this with a live model, it'd be pretty much impossible. You have to do the full body pants and have them put it on over both legs. Alright, so let's take a minute here and we're going to just review these pants. Starting here in the back, our main goal was at the top of her underwear that she prefers the feeling, we wanted to still go another 1.25 inches above that. And then all the way around here to the side seam, again, same thing. We want the top of her pants to be 1.25 inches above the top of her underwear. So we've achieved that all the way through here. And then moving into center front, we just started to square it right back up with center front. Now inside of here, there's a little bit of ease already built in. And how much ease you want is basically one finger should be able to travel through here so it doesn't feel too tight on her. When she's actually wearing the pants, you could decide together if you want to take a little more out of the side seam or center front and center back to also get this to cup in just a little bit tighter. When I look at mine, the top of the waistband kind of dips down a little bit too sudden in this area. I wanted it to square up to center front a little more gradual, so what I'll do is I'll come in with some color pencil and I'll just put a few dots on here and I'll go and change my pattern pieces. So you can see here on the back darts, The reason why I like having the two darts is it has that really nice shaping here in the back. And especially if you're doing plus sizes, so if it's a larger coming around to the side seam, then having the double dart really helps with that shaping. I would keep the same first dart here, 3 inches from center back. But the second dart, what you can do on a larger pair of pants is take the distance from this dart to the side seam, split that in half, and develop your next dart. But yeah, so we still have the really good fit from that original block sloper. Here you can see the side seam pocket, the inseam pocket. And remember, since we never sewed the pocket bag up into the waistband, this style of pocket that I showed you how to do, it actually could go anywhere. So if there was no waistband, or if these were overalls, or if it was a one-piece dress, you can have this pocket move to any location that you want along that side seam. When we come around to the front, everything looks good. She has some breathing room, some moving room for sitting down, standing up. There's no pulling or tension here at the front. And I have it pinned at center front here, here, and of course down here at the full hip level. And I just double check the balance of the horizontal balance line. I'm comparing it to like the cabinets behind me, as well as looking down at the knee level, making sure that that's parallel to the ground as well. So for me, if there's any changes I would do, I would just fill in a little bit of this scoop right here and potentially just take a titch out of the side seams just to get this to cup in a titch tighter, just a little bit tighter. And the top of the pants I love, compared to the top of her underwear, I love the location for that top of the pant. Alright, let's do these changes back on the tabletop, and then we'll start to finish sewing the other leg and do the complete waistband all the way around. Okay, so taking a look back here at my waistband, I put a few red dots on here when I was on the dress form, and I want to make those changes here to my pattern piece. So what I've done is I've erased some of the current line just so it's really light. I also made sure to erase it out here in the seam allowance, and I taped this to a nice fresh new piece of paper. Now I've also attached the back to this piece. Although when I was on the dress form, it was basically going back to 0 at the side seam and then blending into the center front. So I'm not going to make any changes to the back, but me personally, I just like to be able to see the full pattern piece while I'm doing a change. If I bring my pants over and I take a look here using my French curve, I can just start to get an idea of what kind of an angle was I trying to do on the dress form to blend this out. So now I can come in here and start to blend something that'll go back into the center front. And I can add my seam allowance, and then I'll fix my grain line so it's touching all the way up to the seam itself. Another change that I was doing on my mock-up, I was pinching about 1/4 of an inch here at the top of the side seam at the top of the waistband. So I'm going to go ahead and measure out 1/4 inch and 1/4 inch and re-blend this curve. Now in order to do this, I got to separate out my pattern pieces so I can come in here and start to work on the blend. So basically I wanted to come in 1/4 of an inch cutting into here. And I need to make sure I'm doing the same thing on the back. So whatever change I make to one side seam, I need to mirror it to the other side as well. What I'm going to do is I want to come and find what was that original curve that I had going, and I see it's lining up here at 0, and then I'm going to pivot this out for that new 1/4 inch right there. And I notice that down here the number 9 is close to the bottom edge, so I'll flip this over. I'll have my number 9 here. and I'll get the other side of this curve. So then I can come back in here, add my seam allowance, and cut away the extra. So now that I've adjusted the side seams here, taking away a little bit from the top, basically what I've done is I would still need to do more shaping. So if I were to take this side seam, put it on a fold, and connect it back with the front, then you're going to notice there's a little corner here at the bottom and a corner here at the top. So you would need to blend the top again by adding to the pattern pieces and blend the bottom by trimming away from the pattern pieces. Something else that is affected is when you sew the waistband to the top of the pants, you're now going to have a little bit of a corner here in this area. So realistically what should happen is it should blend from 0 right around the full hip and then hitting this new location, and you'll see that you'll end up trimming off just a little bit the full distance here. And of course you would need to do the same thing here for the front. Now since I've already sewn up my mock-up and I've already put the pocket in its place and finished all the edges, I'm not going to be able to come in here and change the shaping of the side seams. So basically for my mock-up, what I'm going to do is I can come back in here and I'm going to fix my waistband and recut these, and I'll just leave my pants alone. Now that's okay for doing this mock-up so we can test the fitting, but eventually you're going to use these patterns to start cutting in final fabric. So at this stage I want to put a reminder on these so I'll remember to adjust the paper patterns along this side seam and the waist, as well as here for the side seams, the waist, and the top of the pattern pieces. So even though I'm going to continue sewing on my muslin mock-up without doing the fixes here on the main body, I want to remember that I still need to do this to the paper patterns before I cut final fabric. Okay, so now I've traced off my front and back onto a fresh, clean piece of paper. I squared up center front and center back, and I got the same curves for the side seams. I put my notches where they belong, the grain line, and then I put dots along the curves, and I need to tape these together so that we can blend the curves on the top as well as the bottom, and then add seam allowance, and we'll be ready to cut this out in some muslin. And for me, since I'm recutting, I just want to remind myself that this is cut 2 on the fold, and this one was cut 4. Okay, so for those of you who are ready, we're going to go ahead and sew together our waistbands, and then we're going to put them onto our pants. Follow along with me to the next video where we're going to sew a full body muslin mock-up so you can try this on yourself or do a test fitting with your client.